Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're talking about villainous intentions. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks.
Howdy.
And welcome to the show. Do
Yeah.
I sound evil to you? No. I sound like an old Western man.
Well, it in context, though, right? You could be evil.
I could be evil. I mean, evil doesn't have to sound gruff, though.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But traditionally.
What was that? The
In
last
media.
evil guy was definitely not like gruffy voice. Huber Grandshoop. He wasn't
Oh my
like gruff.
No.
He was just straight up kind of cheery evil.
Yeah, but, you know. But you got Strahd.
Strahd is definitely evil.
He's a little evil.
Quakes in my boots evil.
Does
He's
the
creepy.
Very
Creepy.
You're not that creepy.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody.
Hey.
We're talking about villainous intentions.
Yeah, this is an
Yeah.
episode Richard was like, we should do this thing, and it'll be about, like, making bad guys
guys.
for D&D. And I was like, cool, what about bad guy players? And
Yeah.
we're like, let's do that too.
Yeah, let's just talk
So
about
now
bad
it's just
people.
bad people.
Yeah, just talk about bad people. We brought it up. Oh, actually, you are the one that gave me inspiration to talk about this because I wanted to talk to you about it. And like everything that we start to talk about, we tell each other to shut up and not talk about it until we get on the podcast so we can talk about it.
This is a problem sometimes because we want
Yeah.
to just like sit and like talk as normal people would do.
We
as
can't do that
friends.
anymore.
We can't do it anymore
Yeah.
because then you're like, shut up, you're going to spoil the podcast. And then we don't have the same like natural reactions to each other's absurd remarks.
Yeah.
So we have to just like hint at a thing and then we write it down on the whiteboard and then we're like,
we
we'll
make the
talk about
whiteboard and
this
we'll
in
talk
2
about
weeks
it later. Yeah. But yeah, it came up because you were listening to a podcast and you were like, I just encountered one of the coolest villains ever. And I love this new scary person and I love this DM and how they're making things scary and creepy.
Mhm.
And I was like, that is actually really cool and very hard to do sometimes. And it's kind of goes both ways, like you said, as far as like villains in the game, big bads, and villains as in your players being villainous.
And I won't get to like spoilers or specifics or anything, but moments of like things you just don't normally do as a DM. And this particular villain had a PC's familiar paralyzed with like a hold person, old monster. They were paralyzed. And he has them by the throat and they can't budge a muscle. And he's basically like gives the whole, okay, yeah. And, you know, the PC's trying to talk their way out of the situation. He's like, oh, you know, and I don't believe you. And if you make a move, I will snap this creature's neck.
Yeah.
And something like that of a character of a familiar you care so much about, it's super cool. Like that is like, whoa, like that's you don't threaten animals.
Yeah.
We draw a line. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even just that. So that's what kind of got me thinking about this this whole idea about villains, and then it got me replaying in past games and everything that we've done and the villains that really stood out to me and why they stood out to me. And then you think about actual plays that you listen to, and then villains that fall flat versus villains that are standoutish. And it's not even just outward actions like that. And a lot of times it can be as simple as dialogue choices, like how you choose to introduce a character, how they carry themselves, the cadence in their speak. So not just their actions, like outward actions, like threatening to murder small animals, but also just how they talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about like, okay, what makes a good villain? Like, how do you get there as a game master? And I think it's an important skill to learn and to be able to identify, because it really is a good capstone for your game. Because not every game has like an overarching villain, right? Because sometimes your villain is, you know,
the friends we made along the way.
No. Oh, the friends you made along the way. But sometimes the villain is the dungeon. You know, like there isn't like an overarching villain, or maybe there is. There's just like a king goblin at the base of the thing. He doesn't have to be this evil, maniacal, built-up thing. He's
this wasn't a big
guy
plot
at the
and plan.
bottom.
This is this is the boss battle.
The boss battle, and the villain, air quotes, is the journey that you're taking throughout this thing, avoiding traps and getting through the maze and everything like that. But then you have stuff like when you go into Strahd, right? And you have this person, this being that has been built up over the course for us of, a year and a half to be this terrifying menace. And it's all these little things that take you up to that point. Because it's real easy to take a module, we're using Strahd as the base example here.
Yeah, it's a great example.
It's a good example.
And it's one a lot of, our listress will understand.
Yeah, will encounter. Yeah. And we're not going to go into spoilers, obviously, but everybody knows Curse of Strahd, right? Strahd.
And I'll get to why I think that's important in a minute.
Villain. And it's easy to like say, okay, well, I have this module. Everybody already knows we're playing this module. Strahd's the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that. It's established. We're just going to move on. We're going to play the game. That doesn't make Strahd a scary villain. Just being there and being the antagonist of the story and just like having those moments where like, okay, well, the module says he appears and threatens everybody, and then we're going to have a combat. Right. Or, you know what I mean? And that doesn't make a very scary villain. That just makes a set piece.
Yeah.
Whereas how you play Strahd, how you introduce him to your characters, the cadence at which you speak as a game master to your players when you're playing Strahd, when you're playing this character, even if you're not just doing the voices, like, because the voices are not required in any scope of the words, but even just the way you choose to speak, the words that you use can really set the groundwork for how your players interact with this big bad and how they view it. So for us in Curse of Strahd, we've had actually fairly limited interaction with Strahd directly. Mm-hmm. We've had very limited interactions, but the interactions that we have had have been so precise and so well thought out. And the stuff that happened was done so perfectly to where he has become this immensely terrifying creature that we have to deal with. And every time he does come in to play, every time that he does speak, it is a situation where everybody at the table shuts up and is really paying attention because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it puts everybody on edge. And that's the difference between having a set piece in a module versus something that is built up to give you that tension and to really have, this thing hanging over your head.
There was a moment recently where he was there for but maybe 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
And in this moment, I gave you, as of course it's your team, your party's option of what to do in a moment. You had the opportunity where you could have swung on him. You could have, like, let's take it to Strahd now while he's here. It's just us and him. And no one moved.
Oh, yeah. No, we were terrified.
And that's what I love about this character. And like I said, I'll bring it back to it. So I'm going back to the beginning of this. Curse of Strahd, the Curse of Strahd. It, at first glimpse, you're like, it's just a campaign about this guy, about this vampire, about this villain. And, well, it'd tell you the mystery's gone. You know who he is and everything right off the jump. You don't meet him right off the jump, though.
No.
At least, you could, but we didn't. And that almost went differently. I'll get to that in a second, behind the screen. And you hear about him from the game, so everybody knows of Strahd. You play the game for a couple of sessions. You never meet the guy, nothing like that. Then you meet people in town, and they mention him, and they mention the devil and the vampire or everything else, and it kind of builds it up a little bit more. And then you meet people that are close to him, and then that builds it up a little bit more. And then we had a scenario where the first time you ever hear his voice, you guys ended a combat, and one of his brides was going to attack you, and he stopped them. You heard his voice boom out over the clouds and through the mist, and then you get this invitation to dinner. and you guys chose not to go, which ended up in ending in like the slaughter of lots of innocents. And then
We were just
you get
late,
another
okay?
invitation.
We were late to dinner.
And then it's just, but then when you meet him for the first time, he greets you at the door. He's very welcoming. It's kind of like a tisk tisk tisk, like you denied my invitation, but it's okay, I understand. It's you just get, the very first time you actually get to sit and have a conversation with him is a like 2 to 3 hour long dinner we had at the table, where you could all just have a conversation. You're just sitting at dinner with the devil, enjoying food and drink, while he sits there drinking a glass of maybe wine, and he lets you roam the castle. You go where you like. Be careful. Be careful where you go. But here's your rooms. It's very nice. Let me know if there's anything I can get you, sort of thing. And you are under my protection until you leave, sort of situation. And then, as the game has progressed and you guys have found items to go against him, well, the stakes start to build up a bit, and you could tell that maybe his close people close to him are kind of after you a little more. And maybe now you guys have upset him enough that perhaps he might be a more active threat.
Yeah.
And from the player side, what is that like?
Yeah, no, upsetting him has always been, so in the beginning, like I said, he was just kind of the way he was introduced and how things kind of like fell into place, the dominoes as they set.
Mm-hmm.
He started to get more and more like I said, more and more serious and more threatening. And I think it really started to hit home for me personally at dinner, because at dinner, I was really pushing my luck.
Yeah, you were.
I was really pushing my luck.
Though you're not the only one. You have an elf in your party who lost their ears.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of us were, but I mean, there was a point where I had to do a couple of checks because there was a force of willpower going back and forth between me and him, like under the table, kind of not like we weren't throwing blows at each other.
Right.
But there was intentions and I thought he was probably going to kill me. And that was like, at that point, things really started to get like more, I guess, like heated as far as like, yeah, this is very real threats. And yes, we are here because we are invited, but we still don't need to be playing this fast and loose kind of a situation.
Sure.
And that's kind of where it really started to like build even more. And then just things just started to progress even faster after that. And like I said, it's just like, it's one thing to just have, a character on a piece of paper. It's another thing to have them be presented in a way that really sets that stage and makes them like a serious thing to contend with and something you really have to think about. He's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I plan for nothing, but I plan for everything. And it's that I prep sessions with the idea of where do I think the players might go?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they go to these areas, who do I need to like know off the top of my head? What might happen on the way there? What will happen if they activate events at these areas? But I don't like go through and make like notebooks full of things and this is what the next session is going to entail, because that always explodes.
Yeah.
No matter what. And an example of that is that when you guys entered Barovia, I did have a thought of what if they don't follow the road? They see the castle at one point and they're like, you know what? We're going to cut through the forest. We're going to beeline to this castle area. And I fully had this thing where I was like, all right, if this happens, then I'm going to push the threat, going to just drill into you how dangerous this world is as quickly as possible. Now, you guys were already afraid.
Yeah.
You stuck to the rules. You followed the road, and you got to the village of Barovia without any like real issues. You were kind of just introduced to the area and stuff like that naturally in the game through narrative and everything. If you had pushed through the forest, it would have ended up in a point where you would have started seeing eyes pop up and you would have had a wolf encounter. But as level 1 characters, you're probably not going to take on like 6 to 8 wolves. So, do I think you guys are going to fight and die? Or do I think you're going to run? If one of you or a couple of you had passed, cool. Congratulations. It's the first game and you're making new characters.
Yeah.
I was ready for that. If you guys ran, that would have been a thing. And you guys would have run across a group of what's the word I'm looking
Vistani.
for? Vistani, thank you. That would have helped basically shield you from the wolves. You would have got to them and they would have kind of stayed at like the wood line, and they would have brought you to like a small camp, and you would have like had dinner with them, would have met them, they would have answered any questions you had, fed you and everything. And then at one point, everyone would have basically froze up. And then I would have had you make a save. And this save would have been whether you were being like a held person or charmed, depending who you were and what the instance was in the story. And Strahd was going to be there at the camp, fully like cloaked. And then he would remove the cloak, introduce himself, et cetera, and like walk away into the mist. And that's where the session would have ended, sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is the thing where I'm like, all right, you have to build like this character up in all these different ways. And I'm glad we went the way we did, but I was fully ready to go like, let's start killing players.
Yeah, let's start killing
let's
players.
start like pushing how serious this is, because he would not have been above taking out a few people at that
that moment in
to
time.
have made a point.
Yeah, and that would have been really interesting to see Strahd that early on, and it wouldn't have been bad at all. Like, it would have been bad for us, but I mean, like, I think that's a really good way to look at villains, and creating a really compelling villain is laying the groundwork for it. And that groundwork is not just one day, like, you're traveling, you get to the thing, and then you're a boss at the end of the dungeon, because that's just a boss at the end of the dungeon. When you're creating a villain and you're laying that groundwork, it's how you're introducing them to your players early on, and how you're tying them into the story. Strahd is actually very specific, because Curse of Strahd is all about Strahd, right? But then you can go to other campaigns and other games and stuff like that, where you have the idea of, okay, well, I'm homebrewing a whole world, you know what I mean? Maybe you're doing it like, your own thing, and you have like this grand bad guy that you want to be, the main antagonist of the story. You don't want to have the first time that they see him at level 16 when they fight him, right? You want them to see him early on, so that you can start laying the groundwork for, why is this person bad, what the motivations are, how connected in the world this villain is. And that's kind of, like how we were introduced to Strahd, like you said, was very sparingly, like little bits and pieces here that lay out that groundwork, so that we know what we're dealing with and how serious he is as a villain, without just being, like, okay, we're level 12 now, time to go fight the big bad.
Yeah.
And I think that is what really helps solidify what a good villain is, because it's not just somebody that is bad because they're big and they're in the castle. It's somebody that is bad because of their intentions, because of their actions, and because of how they react and act in this world that you're building.
And how's the world reacted to them?
Yeah, and how the world reacts to them.
Yeah. To jump campaigns to our Z Team campaign, which was the first game I ever ran, the first game you guys were in players for me, of course. The villain you mentioned, at the very end, Splug. My biggest regret for that whole campaign was that we had to wrap it up as soon as we did, because we had a player that was moving and he had to start jumping into video calls. And there was a while there where we actually split off the campaign to like a sub campaign so that we could still play, but without the one player. And then we kind of tied it all together, because he was like, I think I can play like a few games. And we're like, all right, cool. I guess we'll wrap it up. And there are 2 chapters of the 6-chapter module that we were working with. And granted, all heavily homebrewed and everything else, but 2 chapters that we skipped that would have introduced Splug earlier on, and you would have been introduced when you were introduced, but there were 2 chapters in between that we had to skip by. That basically, you guys are, now you're in jail because of this other thing, instead of getting to go through all these other moments where you'd have had more time going back and forth with this villain and having these like near miss moments of like conversations and never really getting that chance to have a actual like altercation.
Yeah.
But always feeling the effects of things he's done. But instead, because of how we kind of had to wrap it up, got him for what? 4 sessions.
4 sessions, yeah.
You got to know of this character,
which is a lot of sessions when they're long sessions.
And it's he was definitely a fun character. That's another reason I wish I got to play him more, because there was a lot more there that I would have wanted to get to. There was a not that we'll get to do it. There was a entire chapter where you guys would have had to infiltrate a dwarven vault looking for magic items, it's part of the orrery stuff. There's a magical item you needed there for it, and the only way to get in is to be a dwarf. And well, so happens there was a wedding happening there, and you were gonna be helped by one of the wizard working for Ack Inc. that would have put you all into the minds of 4 of the dwarves attending the wedding. And you would have, I would have given you all each papers with little bits of information you knew about yourself as you took over this body. And you would have had to like mingle in this entirely social encounter, like trying to get through this wedding, pretending to be someone you're not while in their body looking for this thing. You get there and Splug was already there. He took the item, and now things start to lock down, and it's this whole thing there. And then you finally get out of there, you get back to your bodies. And at this time you're on an airship, right? Like he's putting this like a spell on you to put you in these bodies, and your airship's being attacked by Splug and his henchmen. And it was going to be this whole thing, this big airship battle and everything else. All these moments with this character that you just didn't get to have. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, God, it just that sucks that like you guys didn't get more time with who I thought could have been a character a villain that would have meant more.
That would have meant more in the long run, yeah.
Now that we're at Strahd, I'm trying to correct those problems.
Giving us more villains.
Yeah, and I want even the not titular characters of the book. I want you to have more time with you've had more time with Rahadin.
Yeah,
than you had with the main villain of that other game.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as far as villains are considered, Rahadim is up there. Like, I mean, he's not the titular. It's not Curse of Rahadim.
You're correct,
but he is still up there as in a very like force, like
sure.
a very present force that is to be scared of and is considered a big bad. Mm-hmm. Not the big bad, but a big bad.
Yeah,
100%.
See, now, next on my list, I got to introduce the brides more often.
I forgot about them. I don't want them back. It's interesting because you go from like a game like that, and then you look at some of the other games, some other modules have a less unified villain, and you can feel it. Yeah. So a good example of that would be Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Oh, I'm so glad you got to this. Yes, because that's something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Here, please.
Because we're getting into spoilery stuff here now.
Of Rime of the Frost Maiden?
Yeah, so if you haven't played Rime of the Frost Maiden,
can we avoid it,
plan on
though?
playing it.
Can
you, though?
I could.
How? Well, you do it then, because I don't think I can do it without spoiling it. Well, I don't trust myself, so I'm going to let you do, because we're on the same page.
Well, maybe I was going to say something else. Page. What I would say about Rime of the Frost Maiden.
I'm not saying that we had first off, Rime of the Frost Maiden was great.
It was so fun.
I
have so many fond memories.
I am not speaking negatively of that campaign or the running of that campaign. Right. It was great, but it is very relevant when talking about villains and build up of villains.
Correct. We would not be at this table speaking into these microphones if it was not for
Rime of the Frost Maiden.
Rime of the Frost Maiden. That is what solidified my love of Dungeons and Dragons. Full stop. And it's what made it to where it was the first game Richard and I had played in together. None of this would be happening if it wasn't for this. Everything snowballed from Rime of the Frost Maiden. No puns intended.
I just got the joke.
My issue with is it Oriole or something like that?
Yeah, Oreo.
The fact that we had heard of her a few times and saw her like once or twice. And then we were fighting her. And it was this big boss battle. And then it was over.
Yes.
And then the game continued for like a few more sessions.
It was more than a few.
And it totally felt like she was just a stepping stone on the way towards the end of the campaign.
Yes, not the end of the campaign.
Right. And at no point was I ever... There was a dragon that I was terrified of.
Mm-hmm.
There was a PC turned NPC that I was terrified of. Searching for actively, but terrified of. Tyler, scared of. The player, where are you? If that dragon flew over us, I was like, we're dead. If Oriel would show up, I would be like, who's this bird lady?
I think we've heard about you.
Yeah.
Are you the one we heard about a couple of times?
Are you the one making it nighttime?
And that's why I brought it up, was because it's a very stark contrast to something like Strahd.
Yeah.
Because Strahd is ever present, even though it's sparingly.
Yeah.
It's still more like, it's more solid because of the way he is presented and has been presented by you as our game master as a villain. And I can see it being done poorly by game masters that don't know how to villain, which is the whole point of the episode.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that, like, it's just a difference between the two, because you have like a villain that is a villain but not as a ever present villain,
right,
versus one that is ever present.
And don't take this as a like, oh, Tyler knows how to villain. I don't. I'm figuring this out as I go.
You've been doing really well, though.
I'm trying. And most of that is I am trying to villain how I would want someone to villain.
Yeah.
And I am just trying my best. I have already like dropped the ball in certain things. I wish I had the brides more present. There's a few things but I'm juggling so many people.
Yeah, there's
between the
a
hags
lot of people
and other creatures that are like,
and
like
the
right
choices
now
that we're making too.
Right now you're dealing with a hag situation that has been an omnipresent situation,
yes,
borderline since the beginning of the game, whether you knew it or not. And like there's all these things and all these characters and plays and everything. And even then I'm like, dang, I've got these vampire brides in my back pocket that I'm not.
We don't need those.
I've used them. I have used them.
We don't need them right now. You can keep them in your back pocket.
You've met all of them individually and had moments and stuff, but I wish I used them more. And I look at Splug and man, I dropped the ball with this character. Wish I used him more. And then I look at this game where I was the player and I'm like, it would have really, really helped if during this crazy blizzard, we're like barely making it through the snow. We're just trying to make it in the next town. We're taking levels of exhaustion and we hear a noise and I turn over my shoulder and for a brief second, I think I see this large looming owl in the background, and then it's just gone in the wisp of the snow.
The wisp of the snow and the
and
wind.
I'm like, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
And just instill that fear, because Tyler knows who's on the cover of the book.
Yes.
And I would have been like, oh crap, we're screwed. My character would have been like, what was that?
Yeah.
Guys, we gotta go. And moments like that would have really been interesting. Or if people were like talking about her more and stuff like that, and some encounters just here and there, even like if it just made her seem like she was this larger than life legend, and then we finally end up at her castle and you're there to confront her, it could have been really built up in this moment of like, oh, maybe it's peace, whatever, something, and then big fight. It really did just feel like we know of this character, characters in room with us, now we fight.
Yeah. Which, like I said, some games are like that and some games aren't.
No.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's such a stark difference between the two is why I brought it up.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. And it's funny, and I'm glad you were also brought up like no disrespect to the game. That game was amazing.
Oh no, it was great. It was amazing.
Just the Dwergar.
Yes.
Are a more memorable villain.
Yes. The Dwergar are more, and the dragon, like
to
you
that
said,
game.
Terrifying.
100%.
Terrifying.
Yes. And then the least memorable to me was Oriel.
The one on the cover, yeah.
Yeah, the one on the cover.
The one on the cover.
And it's funny because I'm like, oh yeah, I think her name's Oriel. I'm not actually positive. Owl Lady on the front of the book.
Yes.
I remember Anjajuk the whale.
Yes.
From like the one session where we were riding on this whale
not
under
a villain,
frigid water.
Best friend.
Best friend. like big air bubble, like looking at chests and stuff, like things in the water going by. Like, I remember this whale with the weird name better than I remember the main villain of that campaign.
Some people would argue that I was also a major villain in that campaign.
I would argue that our friend whose PC became an NPC was the main villain of that game.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Could go.
You spurred that on for sure.
I created a monster.
It's fine. Because now all these characters live on in my games.
They live on in your games, yeah. Which actually brings us to kind of the second part of this, villainous intentions, which evolved from just talking about villains to talking about villainous characters.
Yeah. On your D&D alignment chart that everybody loves, evil is one of those things.
Evil is one of those things.
And the alignment chart's always been that vague thing with you're good, you're neutral, you're evil, you're chaotic, and you're lawful and stuff. Anything with evil in it, oh, well, you can't have an evil character in our game because it'll throw off everything because our intentions aren't aligned. Our Curse of Strahd game right now has an evil character. And you know what? I wouldn't say you could trust that character, but they haven't screwed you over yet.
No, not yet.
They tried once.
Have I? Okay, so side tangent.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Hot take. I don't know if I've ever said this out loud or not.
Ooh.
I hate the alignment chart.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I'll still.
So I'm not alone in that.
No,
I still use it. I'm glad that they put it in the player's handbook. I liked how they refreshed it and put it in there and everything like that. I personally have never been a huge fan of the alignment chart.
I don't care what you tell me your alignment is.
I don't care for
because it doesn't matter. We have an owl character in our game who is like, I'm neutral. I'm true neutral. And I'm like, bet 40% of the time that's true. And the other 60% of the time, you're either doing something heroic or you're being a jerk. Because you balance out the two doesn't mean you're true neutral.
Yeah.
True neutral is you don't care either way. And you're just there. Whatever. It's like our evil character is not out here actively screwing over everyone all the time.
No.
Does not mean that at the end of the day they don't have truly evil intentions.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, alignment system. That's I don't know if that's its own video or not, but
it sounds like it's probably going to end up being its own video. But yeah, like I said, hot take. I just don't really like the alignment system. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it to great effect.
I think it's a fine place to start, especially when you're grasping character creation for the first time, or just like getting an idea of what your character is going to be. But yeah, it's not super necessary. Same thing with like bad guys. Like everyone is on like some sort of like spectrum. You're gonna have days of like, where you wake up and you're just a little upset. You're a little upsetty spaghetti today, and you're a little grumpy.
Little crabs,
little grumpy
in the pants.
You got some crabbies in there. I don't know how they got there. Should take a shower after you go fishing.
Yeah, I guess crabs in the pants could mean two different things there. I was thinking of crabby pants.
Yeah,
not the other one, but
really upset. This is a family show. So yeah, as far as players.
So that's my question here. What do you think about evil characters?
I want to get this off the jump, rip the Band-Aid, because it didn't happen in our game, even though the player says it did happen. Make sure your dungeon master knows.
We've got two stories here, sir.
Yes, and at my table, mine goes. The player did not
sounded like a villain now, sir.
I'll remember this, Lex. If the player doesn't inform the GM, DM, whatever, that they are planning on playing a villainous character, you're not going to feed them villainous motives, villainous moments. You're not going to be able to feed that essence of their character. And then granted, maybe they do some things and you're like, oh, wow, they're kind of being a jerk. Okay. I get it. Barovia's dark and scary.
Yeah.
And it's very stressful. But then the moment you find out, like 8 months into running a game, that they've been a villain, like the evil this whole time. Sorry, not a villain. Evil. Things change, and then you reform your opinion about the situations and stuff, and then you can really lean into those moments and the options you present to that character. So it benefits everybody.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell all the other players. Don't have to. If you're a super transparent table, it helps during, session 0 to explain to everyone, hey, just letting everyone know I'm going to be running an evil character. I don't plan on this screwing over any of your characters. I'm not going to push back on anything. Just heads up. Yeah. I'm going to be a little evil. And, if you have any issue with that, let me know so we can work through it. The very minimum, let your dungeon master know.
Yeah. I think that it's very important that it is, like you said, talked about with somebody. And I think it's important because I think there is often a misunderstanding of that alignment system and what actually is evil and what's not. Because I think there are some people that do believe that their character is evil.
Mm-hmm.
But by the alignment chart, they are not evil. They are rude and mean and not necessarily a nice person.
Chaotic neutral,
but they're not evil.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a line there, there's, okay, I'm not a nice guy. When we go to the tavern, I'm not going to pay for my food. I'm going to get up and walk away from the table and go to bed and make you pay the bill.
Dude.
Because I am evil.
Meanwhile, we've
got somebody summoning a demon in their room.
We've got a barbarian who started this game off as good aligned, who has dropped to neutral, who's trying to convince me that essentially juicing the souls of orphans.
Yeah.
To sell off to someone is not an evil act.
It's not an evil act.
It's just transactional. It's just business. And I'm like, you're out here procuring organic orphans. And that's not evil? It's to get a sword.
And the argument is like, well, they're orphans. Nobody's going to miss them.
Right?
And I'm like, excuse me? Excuse? What?
I'm not saying you're the villain, but I am saying you're evil, my bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. To this
day, if
day,
you survive this campaign, you might be the big bad in the next campaign.
All the orphans have gone missing. Who do you think did it?
Well, there are honestly scenarios in which I see Strahd being usurped by somebody in our party.
Yeah, but who? Right?
That's the problem. That's the problem. It's like the Spider-Man meme right now.
I'd say it's a coin flip, but there's not enough sides on a coin.
There's not enough sides on the coin.
You got to roll a die.
We got to do the D4.
Yeah.
And right now, it's the Spider-Man meme.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, there's a spectrum there that, not necessarily evil. Have we made some poor choices? Everybody in the party has made at least one poor choice.
For sure.
That isn't not necessarily a good choice.
And I like that.
Good person.
It grounds your characters to the setting.
And actually I think we talked about this a little bit in the Witch review. Because I told everybody that I was partaking in the Wicked subclass of the Witch, which is a witch that has started to perform actions that gear more selfishly rather than helping the people around them. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily make me evil. Right. Obviously, I'm not doing things right. And when we talked about it, it was kind of like, okay, well, this land has been making me make choices that I wouldn't normally make.
Yeah.
And it's been putting me in an awkward situation where I've had to make choices that are not necessarily in alignment with my teachings and my upbringings.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this, it kind of makes sense that I would start to fall from grace, so to speak.
For sure.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily make me evil, but is it a path that could lead to that? Obviously, yes.
When you showed me that path for you and I read through it, it's just like, wow. It's funny how it's everything has lined up.
Yeah.
To where I believe I mentioned it is absolutely your choice.
Yes.
Whether you want to go down this path mechanically, but it lines up.
I'm a stickler for role playing.
Yeah.
And I'm a stickler for if something feels right and it looks right, then kind of go with it and see where it goes. And it was never my intention to use this path.
Yeah.
In fact, I built my character around a very specific coven path. And it was amazing. The Coven of the Claw.
Mm.
I loved it, and I really liked the direction that I was going with that coven. I lost it all.
Yeah.
I lost everything from that coven by turning wicked, and everything is gone from that now, and I had to completely change the way I even play my character. But looking at it and looking at like the choices that I was making as a player, it just kind of made sense.
Totally.
Like to those choices to have ramifications,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think it's interesting because, you know, I brought it up to you and we talked about this, which is how you do that if you're going to be playing a character that is going to have villainous intentions, which, you know, these are very loosely villainous intentions, but it kind of all falls into the same blanket. Yeah.
Hey, it's called Wicked. So
Called Wicked. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love so much because the villainous intentions of this can also it open up the door for a redemption path.
Yes.
Where
exactly.
I as the dungeon master do not know this is going to happen. This is between you and Lux. And the choices you make and the friends you surround yourself with and just how the dominoes fall.
Mm-hmm.
But there's absolutely the option and potential for you to, you know, just stop focusing on the selfishness a little bit and just kind of end up back at your original coven.
Yeah.
And you never know.
Yeah.
I'm as a watcher of from my side of the screen watching you guys role play and set the scenes and stuff. I am interested to see what choices everyone is going to make and wondering where Lux is going to end up, because I could see a world where Lux goes full I can't remember your Tav from Baldur's Gate, where at the end of the game you're like, you know what? Screw it.
Full tadpole.
Full tadpole. I don't care anymore. Or you're like, you know, give to the world.
Yeah.
And you just have this big, like, I'm going to spend the rest of my days fulfilling, you know, my duties to my coven and everything. And you end up back, like, doing your thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I remember when, like, we first started our interactions with Strahd, and he was all like, I can give you what you want, which means I can send you home. I can send you away from here, which is never, like, the goal for Lux was never to get herself out, was to get other people out.
Right.
Right? So how has that changed?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like, the idea of villainous intentions is one of the things I wanted to make a point of is, as a game master, I think you need to be open-minded to characters that want to lean evil in your games. And I know it's something that's like a hard and fast rule for a lot of game masters, which is I don't play with evil characters. This is a only good people party. We're not dealing with any alignments that are evil. We're not dealing with anybody with, you know, like evil characters. If you want to be an evil character, we're going to have an evil campaign where everybody is evil.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you want to do that. But I think as a game master, I think you should be open to the idea of having characters want to make maybe not so altruist choices, because it leads to very interesting situations and can lead to redemption arcs even. I mean, if somebody makes a very obviously evil choice that's very selfish, could have major ramifications for the entire campaign and even have like an entire story to bring them back from that brink and turn them around.
Yeah.
Or changing the opinion of somebody else, another party member, or even NPCs or the world in general. So I think it's interesting. It's something, like I said, that you should be open-minded to, but obviously it needs to be discussion too.
That's the main thing, I think, is you have to, in our case, I'm glad that our decidedly evil character out the jump didn't make any like overtly evil, like comically evil decisions.
Yeah, not
they
comically
role
evil.
played correctly, in a good way where, you know, some of that's like intended, but they weren't out here like killing their party members in the dead of night for fun.
Yeah, for fun.
Like that's not going to fly.
No.
You at the end of the day, if you're going to be playing an evil character in a game with other players, and it's not a we're all evil kind of thing, crusading through the world, spreading divine justice, in the most evil way possible, you at least have to agree that you and me We don't have the same ideals, but we do have the same goal.
Yeah.
And whether mine is to get out of here so that I can go back to spreading tyranny amongst the lands.
I got other places to conquer that aren't here.
You're telling me the only way to get out is to kill this vampire guy? Fine. We're aligned for now. So set something like that up. Either way. And then you're fully set up to be the dude, like, oh, well, why wouldn't we just give up the burgomaster? What is he to us?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the party member might hit you with because killing is wrong. Like, and you might have this back and forth. And that's fine. Just don't be ruining the game for other people.
Don't be ruining the game for other people.
You definitely have to like watch the eggshells a little bit if you're going into this knowing you're gonna be evil. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if you play it right, like our evil character has done, I don't think they've ever really had to like watch it too much. It's just these flare-ups of almost where the other players are like,
what?
Wait, you're gonna what? Like, oh yeah. And just deadpan, like, I'm gonna kill him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I leave here, they're unalived. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think as a game master too, I think it's also important for you to just be mindful of it. And it's really easy to see because people are going to telegraph by their actions.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a lot of times that a player wants to be evil. And sometimes it's just an unconscious choice because like somebody like a player like me, right? I hate the alignment chart. Yep. I don't like it. I'm not going to use it. So I'm not going to build a character and then make the choice when building this character that this character is lawful neutral or lawful good or whatever it may be. I'm not going to make that choice. I am going to build a character and then I am going to play that character as I have built that character. And sometimes I might make a choice as that character that's going to strike you, my game master, as a overtly negative choice. That was an evil choice. And if you as a game master see somebody make a choice like that, talk to them. Talk to them about it after the game and be all like, hey, you're heading down a road that's interesting here. I want to get where you're at in your headspace. Let me know what your thought process was on this. What are your goals on this? Because we need to be on the same page, right? Because because they did something that surprised you, like, oh, I didn't think you were going to kill that guy. Definitely an option. You totally did it. It was a choice. Let's talk about why you made that choice though. Like, was it like in a heat of the moment kind of a thing? Or have you been planning this? Like, have you been thinking about this? And this is just the first time that it happened aloud was when you could stab him in the neck and you just chose to do that. It's going to be not easy, but sometimes it will be easy to kind of telegraph where your player's head's at. And it's a good thing to see that and then make sure that you bring it up because you don't want to just ignore it and then have it come back and rear its ugly head a couple sessions down the road because you didn't acknowledge it kind of a situation. Yeah.
These check-ins are something I try to do too.
Yeah.
I've within the last week had a phone call with one of the players. Obviously not you, because you don't know about this conversation. But I have spoken with one of the players recently just to like align and like, all right, this is where I think you're going. Is this, does this jive with how you see things going? Because if a player wants a ending, if they want a conclusion for their character, if they want to build towards a certain direction, I want to help them do it.
Yeah, you want to help them get there.
I don't want to push against you. Because then neither of us are having fun because, oh, I'm planning on a thing happening and it's going to be really cool. I can't wait. And then you just knock all my toys down and I'm like, oh, well, all right. Well, player choice. But at the same time, if you're building something up and I build up these big walls that like don't let you in and you're like, well, my player choice is gone. And like, no, just if you're gonna make a star shape with your body, I'm gonna make a star shape hole. Like, like I'll come through this wall. Like it's not meant to keep you out. It's meant to like organize. So yeah, communication. At the end of the day,
is fun.
If you are an evil player,
but even more important if you're an evil player.
Yeah, evil DM, just seed it.
Yes, seeding. I think that's a good way of putting it. seeding, laying that groundwork,
Yeah.
is a really good way to make a meaningful villain.
Yep.
Somebody that everybody's going to remember and is going to stick out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's your main, your main antagonist, his cohorts, people around him. Make sure they all feel like they belong in this world and like they've affected the world. And don't just throw out a bad guy at the end, because then it's a boss battle, not a villain.
Yeah, not a villain. And like I said before, you don't have to act. Like, you don't have to be an actual actor, with specific voices,
right.
And like, you don't have to have voice modulation.
It's
and
fun,
like,
though.
big booming voice. All that stuff is fun. It's great, but it's not necessary to make a truly evil character.
Totally.
Or to make something feel dangerous and or evil.
I bring up Brennan a lot, and I bring him up for the rest of my life. Him and Matt, of course, they're the two a lot of people default to, especially in the D&D space. And someone pointed out to Brennan that he voices females and villains in his normal natural voice.
Yes.
And everyone else he like gives an accent or something like that.
To or something
and he's
crazy.
like, I don't know why this is. This is I probably should bring this up to my therapist. But I'm like, hey, that is interesting. Like the voice that you feel accompanies, this villain you have set in your mind is your own natural voice. There's something to be said about that, especially with like, you don't have to try. It's not going to sound weird. It's just gonna, it's the words at that point. And you've mentioned it's what you're saying and the point you're getting across. And I mean, I will do funny voices for the rest of my life. So help me Bahamut. And
if you can do a funny voice, do a funny voice.
Everyone, you're all capable of doing funny voices.
Everybody can do a funny voice.
Serious voices, sad voices, everything. It's just some people don't want to. They feel embarrassed. Yeah. They don't feel like it adds to, the immersion or their enjoyment of the game. That's absolutely totally fine. Just like how sometimes people use battle maps and other people just use theater of the mind, and no one knows which is better because they're all equally great. Acceptable. I do have a favorite, but that is between me and Bahamut. And I don't know. We'll probably talk about it soon in the podcast. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. Just seed your bad guys.
Seed.
Make them purposeful.
Plant your soil.
If you're going to be a villain,
water it.
And you're not the GM, talk to your GM.
Bingo. Boingo. It's a good one.
Have fun being mean.
Big time.
Or evil.
Yep. Don't be mean.
Don't be mean.
Be evil.
Be evil.
Oh, that's a good say. Don't be mean. Be evil. Hey, everyone. If you're listening on all those audio-only platforms and stuff, I say audio-only, but Spotify has a video now. Did you know Spotify has video now? What?
Yeah.
They also have comments, all those other things. But if you're any of those audio podcasty areas over there, please feel free to give us a 5-star if you don't mind. If you're on YouTube, a like and subscription is super duper appreciated. Your positive affirmations help keep the lanterns lit. And Richard, for now, I have been Tyler.
And Tyler, for now, I've been Richard.
And everyone out there listening, we've been True Strike. Bye.
Goodbye.
Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on Threads, Blue Sky, or Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.